Now, we've been talking about how great the immune system is and how important it is for fighting off pathogens. But just like every other system, there are some problems that could happen with the immune system. The first issue is allergies. So allergies is when your immune system overreacts to harmless antigens. So just like your immune system fights off the bad guys, sometimes it can think something is bad and overreact to it. The second class of immune system problems is an autoimmune disorder. So an autoimmune disorder is when the immune system attacks self-antigens, meaning the immune system mistakes the person's own body as something foreign. An autoimmune disorder could either target a specific organ, or it could be a systemic autoimmune disorder, which means it attacks multiple organs throughout the body. And the third immune system disorder is called an immunodeficiency. So an immunodeficiency is when the immune system is weak. So it's a weakened immune system. There's two types of immunodeficiencies. There's a primary immunodeficiency, meaning the individual is born with this issue, probably either a genetic issue or just a birth defect. Or there's an acquired immunodeficiency, which means the immunodeficiency develops during life. So let's first talk about allergies, or the over-response of the immune system to something harmless. There's two classes of allergies. The first class is an immediate allergic response, meaning it happens immediately. It's a very quick immune response. Now, the main thing that's responsible for immediate allergic reactions are cells called mast cells. So mast cells, they release this chemical called histamine. So histamine causes an inflammatory response or inflammation. And sometimes this is a good thing, but when it's to a certain antigen that's harmless, this can be a bad thing. So things that might cause immediate allergic reactions could be something that comes in contact with the skin, such as latex. A lot of people have allergies to latex or animal pet dander. It could be injection, like a bee sting. It could be something that somebody has an allergy to certain food or medication that they ingest. A lot of people have allergies to nuts or shellfish. Or it could be through inhalation, like inhaling pollen or some kind of dust or mold. Now, a lot of people have these immediate allergic reactions. They usually will experience like watery eyes or a stuffy nose. But sometimes what can happen is the most severe form of immediate allergic reaction is anaphylactic shock. So anaphylactic shock is like a shocking the immune system. And basically it leads to a life-threatening drop in blood pressure. So whenever somebody has a severe allergy that could trigger anaphylactic shock, which is life-threatening, they often will carry an EpiPen. And an EpiPen contains a neurotransmitter, epinephrine. It will help counteract this shock and counteract the actions of the immune system. Now, some people, if they have especially seasonal allergies to pollen or to pet dander, they might take a medication called an antihistamine. And you might have taken something like this, such as Benadryl, for example. So an antihistamine does the opposite of histamine. It counteracts the action of histamine to help prevent that allergic reaction. The second type of allergy is a delayed allergic response. So this means the allergy is there, but it doesn't happen right away. It could take hours or even days before somebody notices they're having an allergic response. Most delayed allergic reactions are due to contact dermatitis, meaning skin contact to the allergen. For example, a lot of people are allergic to poison ivy, and a lot of times you don't even see the effects for like a couple days before the skin will break out in this poison ivy. Some people, if you ever wore this like really cheap jewelry that contains like certain metals like nickel, you might see a delayed allergic reaction at the site where you were wearing that cheap jewelry. So that's allergies. Our next class of immune system problem is an autoimmune disorder, where the immune system mistakes self for non-self. So the immune system thinks the person's own body is something foreign, and it mounts an attack against the own body. Now, for some reason, it's really poorly understood, but autoimmune disorders are more common in females. Now, that doesn't mean males can't get an autoimmune disorder. It's just that, it's much more common for females than for males. So there are dozens of different types of autoimmune disorders. I'll just give you a few examples. So the first example is called type 1 diabetes. Okay, this is different from type 2 diabetes. In type 1 diabetes, the immune system attacks beta cells, which are in your pancreas. The job of beta cells release a compound called insulin. So insulin is released by beta cells in the pancreas. Now, insulin has a really important job. Whenever you eat a meal that contains sugar, glucose, your cells need that glucose so that your cells can make ATP. But glucose can't just get into the cell alone. It needs something to carry it to the cell. And that's what insulin does. Insulin picks up the glucose, brings it to your cell so that the glucose can enter your cells, and now your cells are happy. And the sugar in your blood gets depleted. Somebody with type 1 diabetes, their pancreas stops making insulin. So there's no insulin now in the bloodstream. So that means that glucose can accumulate in the blood and it can't get into the cell. So your cell is now starved of glucose. Okay, it's not great. You're not making any ATP. Your cells are really unhappy. When someone is depleted of insulin, okay, like when they first get type 1 diabetes, or if they don't have any insulin in their bloodstream, they're going to feel extreme thirst. They're going to feel extreme hunger and fatigue and weight loss because their cells can't take up any of the sugar in their body. Therefore, the treatment for someone with this type 1 diabetes is they need to inject insulin into their body because their pancreas can't make it anymore. So when they use insulin injections, it does the same thing as natural insulin. It can bring the sugar to the cell. Another autoimmune disease is called Graves' disease. Now, Graves' disease, this is when the immune system attacks the thyroid gland. And the thyroid gland produces a hormone called thyroid stimulating hormone. This hormone is really important for monitoring your metabolism, amongst other things. So when somebody has this Graves' disease, one of the key signs is something called a goiter, okay, which is like the neck swollen up like this because the thyroid gland is located here in the neck. So you may see a goiter because of the overproduction of this hormone. And also because of the overproduction of this hormone, the person may see an increased metabolism. They may lose a lot of weight, rapid heartbeat. For some reason, there's this characteristic bulging of the eyes because the hormone can build up behind the eyes, causing this bulging. So this is another autoimmune disorder. Here's a couple autoimmune disorders that are systemic, meaning they affect multiple parts of the body. One of them is called lupus. So lupus causes this really extreme joint pain and swelling at the joints. It also can lead to rashes and many other signs. Another example is rheumatoid arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is when the immune system attacks collagen at connective tissues. So what you see is this joint damage, crippling joint damage that can happen when somebody's very young, even when they're in their 30s or 40s. Our final type of immune system disorder is an immunodeficiency. Like I mentioned, there's two different types of immunodeficiency. One type is an acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, or AIDS. Okay, acquired, meaning this immunodeficiency doesn't just happen overnight in one day. It takes many, many years before this immunodeficiency develops. One thing that can lead to an acquired immunodeficiency is a virus known as HIV. HIV is the human immunodeficiency virus. Now, the HIV virus, it attacks helper T cells. So remember we talked about helper T cells. We said they're really important for activating the immune system. So HIV specifically targets helper T cells. It causes the cells to die and lyse open. And over time, okay, over a span of about 10 to 15 years, if the person doesn't have any treatment at all, the helper T cell number becomes so low that the immune system becomes very weak. And that's when we finally call it AIDS. So HIV is not the same thing as AIDS. HIV is a virus that slowly attacks the immune system and can lead to this immunodeficiency syndrome. Now, when a person develops AIDS, their immune system is very weak and they're more susceptible to secondary infections, okay, like certain pneumonias, things that normally wouldn't attack a healthy person. The second type of immunodeficiency is a primary immunodeficiency. It's not acquired, but instead a person is born with this deficiency that makes their immune system unable to work properly. There's two main types of primary immunodeficiencies. The first is called SCID, or severe combined immunodeficiency. A baby born with SCID, there's something wrong with the cells in their bone marrow, and they do not produce T cells or B cells. And we know those are the main cells of the adaptive immunity. So an individual with SCID basically has no immune system, and they would die very quickly of an infectious disease. Luckily, we can use a bone marrow transplant. As soon as the baby's born at a very young age, we'll do a bone marrow transplant to treat this disorder. The second main primary immunodeficiency is called DiGeorge syndrome. In a baby with DiGeorge syndrome, their thymus gland does not develop properly. So they basically do not have a functioning thymus gland. So therefore, their T cells cannot mature properly. So they basically have no T cells. So these individuals will be very susceptible to fungal, viral, or bacterial infections, and they usually will die very young due to an infection. Now, there was a baby born in the 70s, okay, and you might have heard of him. They made a movie about him called The Bubble Boy. And this was a boy that was born with SCID, and they didn't know what to do. They didn't want him to die, so they left him in a plastic bubble, and he lived in this bubble for 12 years. He never contacted a single human being unless it was between him and the bubble. And I posted a great video that I really want you to watch about this bubble boy, and you're going to love it. So here's the video right here. It's under this week's stuff. It's the Bubble Boy video. You're going to just love this video, so please watch it.